Excellent. I'm not going to lie, we haven't done one of these in a couple months. I feel like this happens every time we take a couple months off. My heart is like pounding right now. I'm like excited and I'm nervous, and we've been rushing all day for a bunch of last minute changes and updates and things that we're going to share with you today. So as Stacy said, there's a lot to cover. The amount of stuff coming out of this community is kind of amazing. It was really cool to hear. And in the beginning, all the people from all the different areas, getting certified, presenting, building practices. Today, the big topic is, of course, the State of FinOps. This is the third year that we've done this, and we are going to ask you to spend the next 120 minutes of your life here with us. We're going to start with community news and introductions to new members. The bulk of the time today is going to be on the State of FinOps panel. We've got a great set of panelists, as well as some interesting interstitials around things like Nike's growth and hiring plans. And then the last 30 minutes are going to be working group updates and breakouts that are you as a community sharing what you're working on and coming together to have discussions. So with that, you ready to get started? Cool, let's do it. So we are the FinOps Foundation. For those of you who are new to us, we're all about helping the people, those of you who are doing the practice of managing the value of cloud. We are a part of the Linux Foundation, so Stacy, who you met at the beginning, and all of our team, there's about 20 or so of us now, are all employees of the Linux Foundation, which is a global nonprofit, but is a US-based 501c6 trade association. And this is a slide actually from our January board deck from our governing board. FinOps just keeps getting to be more and more ubiquitous around the world. The foundation has been going since about 2019 and kind of started at the beginning of this larger movement. The coolest stat on here for me is that we now have 88% of the Fortune 50 who are either members of the foundation or have certified people or building practices in some way. And super exciting news, a lot of you heard this week. I was like, how many days ago was that? It was just yesterday. Microsoft joined us, and we're going to be introducing them today. So we now have the vast majority of the major clouds who are participating in the foundation. And as you saw in Microsoft's blog post, and hopefully they'll show a little bit if there's time, a lot of great things to align against the community framework and best practices that you all in building that they're going to be doing. If you don't watch LinkedIn, I have the hashtag FinOps set up and followed there. So much happening around the world in the community. Somebody mentioned, podcasts, there's a lot of great things going on there in the pre-roll. The photos are Alice in Israel, one of our FinOps ambassadors who presented at a great Monday.com training they did there. You got Tiago from Brazil down at the bottom right, who just did a meetup with 100 people in Sao Paulo. A lot's going on. So definitely share your stories. A great way to meet people. Follow that hashtag FinOps on LinkedIn. And I think what I wanted to share with you, and this hopefully comes across as a bigger announcement than it may seem, we're starting a global roadshow. The last month and a half, we have been spending a ton of time figuring out which geos and cities, based on this upswell we've seen from folks where they want to get together in person. They want to have connections, hear practitioner stories. The really cool thing about this is these are events that the FinOps Foundation will be hosting directly, that we're hosting in neutral venues, meaning these are non-sponsored events. They are in really cool venues that we've hired out in great cities. And you're going to hear amazing practitioner stories and get a chance to network with others. Most of these are going to be about 2.5 hour events, a couple speakers, some networking, a bunch of cities coming on the right side. You can see us kind of hinting at some of those. The signups for all these are not up yet. Watch for those. We'll be sending them out shortly. However, the February 22nd DC event is next week. That signup is out there. The Amsterdam one I also want to share with you about is a community day. This is one of the bigger ones we're doing. In the pre-roll, some folks from the Netherlands were sharing their stories. This is a 2-day event. It's a full day of training in Amsterdam if you want to get FinOps certified, and then it's a full day of community events. I think about 10 different speakers, interactive discussions, networking. So if you're in Europe or want to go to Europe, this was a great chance to do that. It's about a month out now. I just found out now there's a bunch of direct flights from Portland, where I live now, to go to Amsterdam and to London and places they just added. So even if you're in the US or somewhere else, might consider jumping over. It should be a great event. Small but focused, a great group of about 150 people in person. And of course, the big thing that we are working up to is FinOps X. This has been months in the making already. We've got months left of planning. There is a brand new website that is launching for this in about a week that is going to start to outline a long list of speakers that are already approved. This is 3 days. It's going to have almost 100 speakers, 1,000 attendees. And just to give you a sense of the scale and way we're going to play this event, the award ceremony is at sunset on an aircraft carrier on a 4-acre deck surrounded by vintage aircrafts and looking at the ocean. This is going to be a very high-class event, bigger, better than last year, and really the center of the FinOps universe. The day sponsorship opened for this. It's sold out. We're still working through a big backlog of tickets. This is a request to attend event. We're trying to keep a really nice balance of practitioners and various parts of the community in there. So get this on your calendar. It's 3 days, sorry, not December. Oh, I wish we had more time. June 27th to June 30th. And watch for the new site launching in about a week with all the updated details. We also wanted to highlight, and this is the last bit before we get into introductions, the FinOps certified professionals who are recently getting certified. You heard Stacy and Rob on the pre-roll who have been running this program. This is like a university level course, which takes 4 to 6 weeks to complete and has contribution requirements, has community give back requirements, has a lot of prereqs attached to it. And these are people around the world that are really leading into being leaders in the FinOps space. We think and believe that every major practice will ultimately need to have at least one of these, and then a longer tail of the FinOps certified practitioners. So definitely consider looking at this if you're looking at FinOps as a long-term career. And as a segue into the introductions, we recently, as part of the announcement of Microsoft joining, did some research and found out that Microsoft actually has more FinOps certified professionals than any other organization in the world as of the end of January. So with that, very excited to welcome the team at Microsoft who's joining us. Jim and Lee will be joining the governing board. Michael Flanagan is going to be running for election in the Technical Advisory Council. And the gentleman running the commerce program there, Fred DeLombardi, is going to give an introduction.
Sorry, unfortunately, Fred cannot be here. And I'm sure he'll have future opportunities to meet everybody in the community. So I'm just gonna speak a few words if it's okay. Okay, so first of all, very nice to meet everybody here. I'm super excited about this important step Microsoft is taking. So Commerce for Microsoft Cloud is focusing on empowering customers and enabling partners, of course. FinOps is always a critical part of our strategy in commerce. So as a premier member of FinOps Foundation, now we become a key player in the cloud financial management community. So we want to collaborate closely with Foundation and look into ways to align our product and guidance with FinOps framework and bring the best possible outcomes to our customers. And also, I attended last year's FinOps X conference. It was such a great experience and success. I was amazed by the energy and all the sharings, topics, and learnings among the community. So I'm sure the upcoming one this June will be even more exciting. And now I'm honored to be a member in the governing board. Myself, I'm eager to learn more about your experience in driving FinOps within your orgs. I look forward to working together with the board and community as we continue to explore new ways of optimizing our customers' cloud spend, especially in this macroeconomic situation, and providing innovative solutions to our customers and making a difference in, again, this community. Thank you.
Jim, and that's so great. You were making me laugh because I was having flashbacks talking to you and Fred before FinOps X last year. And we were talking about them joining and they were like, we're gonna come to FinOps X and see, we're gonna see what you're all about and see if this is really something we want to be a part of. And we had a meeting with Jim and one of her colleagues there and kind of got to know each other more. And it's great to see the relationship kind of finally come to fruition. So thank you so much for your joining of us and being a part of the governing board. Looking forward to doing a lot more.
Yeah. Michael, you want to say a couple words?
Sure. Just real quick. I just want to say hi to everyone. I'm Michael from the cost management team under Jim and Fred. I'm really excited to be here. You'll mostly find me in focus meetings and in the Azure Cloud channel. Some of you probably already seen me there. I'm hoping to join the tax soon. I'll be pulling others in with specific focus areas across the company. So if there's any area you think that you'd like to see us more involved in, don't be shy. Definitely let me know. I'd love to learn more. There's been an incredible amount of interest within Microsoft since the announcement. Actually, JR was just mentioning that to me yesterday. So I think that I can speak for the whole company when I say that we're going to do some great things together, and I can't wait to see all of you at FinOps X.
And if you haven't already, check out the blog post that Michael and Jimin posted on the Azure blog. It provides a really great roadmap for the ways that they want to engage with the community through things like, aligning to best practices, training and certification, involvement with the community. And Michael, thank you as well for all your work to the involvement. Michael was a great contributor to the FinOps book as well, and jumped in last minute heroically with a lot of updates to the Azure side of things. So looking forward to working more with you. Excellent. So the next folks we want to introduce are some people you may have seen around the FinOps space, because honestly, they've been doing it as long as I have, for sure. I first met David and Jason back in, I think, 2012, when they were at a different company, a couple companies back, managing cloud at scale, even back then. So Here Technologies has joined the FinOps Foundation as an enterprise end user member, and wanted to introduce David Van Hoven to tell us a bit more about what they do and their own journey into the FinOps land.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, everyone. My name is Dave Van Hoven. I'm a senior DevOps manager with Here Technologies. You could jump over to the next one. I've got a quick set of slides here. Here Technologies is the world's leading location data and technology platform. Our platform is a location toolkit that basically allows you to upgrade everything. You can go ahead and jump to the next one, and we can take a look at what we do. So we have plenty going on in our space. Lots of data being processed. We have the largest set of curated map data. We have standard def, high def, 3D all in one place. Privacy is key to the way that we operate via anonymization and consent technology. And basically, we allow you to create your own map with your data and your rules. We have a huge volume of data and info that's going on out there, 21 million plus vehicles providing real-time probe data, 160 million vehicles running Here maps, 141 million 3D building footprints. So lots of activity happening out there. And we kind of wrangle all this together with our key FinOps metrics in unit economics. So first and foremost, cost avoidance and savings is top on our mind. That's just basically comparing price and usage. Another metric that's really important in our environment is cost per million. This is looking at our API hits over our total cost per application. And last year and this year especially, we've really focused a lot on our utilization of services. And this is a focus on our EC2 metrics like CPU and memory. So if we take a look at some of the key FinOps top hits from back in the day, back in 2011, we had Cloud Days. That's the time that we actually went and adopted cloud at Here Technologies. 2012, we had Nothing Gonna Keep You Down. That's our central governance and cost allocation development. And when we started to take a look at the ICE tool for billing. 2014 was Cloud to My Heart. This is when we took a cloud-first approach. We got approval from our top management to start looking at cloud only when possible. 2016, We Are Family. That's when we brought in our central FinOps leaders and started to engage on an EDP. 2017, two hits there. Better Believe, the bill. That's when we started to engage commercial FinOps tools. We brought in Cloudability actually for starting to wrangle our colossally large bill. And also in 2017 was No Stop Till RI. That's when we started to introduce an RI everything strategy to help control costs. Coming in 2018 was Clean Up Your Cloud. This is when we really started to adopt automation using Cloud Custodian to help kind of control costs and adjust how our folks were operating internally. 2019 was RCAT Me. RCAT is our right sizing compliance automation tool. It's implemented with a Jira timer. If you get the opportunity, I'd recommend that you go out and check the AWS reInvent talk on that one. It's really interesting stuff. You might find something useful there. 2020 was Eclipse of My RI. This is when we migrated from savings plans, and they came in on the scene, and we kind of migrated over and took those over from our RI presence. 2021 was Save, Save, Save. FinOps everywhere. Teams got more help, more data, and just really with the target of go out and save more. And last year in 2022 was Don't Stop Cloud. That was when our tooling kind of went on the offensive and we started to go out and attack our no use, low use utilization of things like EC2, EBS, RDS, stuff like that. 2023, to be determined. We're focused right now really, really tightly on hitting the ground running and continuing to attack costs. And you know, it's where we're at. That's what our journey has been. So that's what I got. JR, thank you.
That's really cool, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. It's good to see that you all have been in this for so long and still evolving on it as well. I mean, I always talk about the clouds get more complex, the data gets bigger, there's new services, and there's always more to do. Also, wanted to highlight something I'm really excited about. I just screenshotted, milestone for us anyway. We usually get 800-900 people at a time on these, but we just broke Zoom. We hit the Zoom max at 1,000. I don't know if you're watching the countdown there. It hit 1,000. So if anybody drops off, they may not be able to get back on until someone else drops off. We've asked Zoom repeatedly if there's a bigger version. There's not, to keep it running this way. But yeah, really cool to see community growing. All right, next introduction is one of our new FinOps certified solutions. And when we have a new Premier member join like this, we usually give them a couple of minutes at the top to introduce themselves and what they're doing. And then Webb Brown, who's the co-founder and CEO of Kubecost, is also going to be joining the panel with a couple of these other folks to talk about the state of FinOps data. Webb, over to you. We'll do the fun, make sure Webb can unmute bit here. And how's that, Webb? Can you hear us now?
All right, I've got you unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you so much, JR. Hey, everybody, I'm Webb Brown, co-founder of Kubecost and one of the original authors of the Kubecost open source project. I've been active in the FinOps community for a while. I think, JR, you and I first did a panel, I think about 2 years ago, and I don't remember there being 1,000 attendees to that. So it is incredible to see all this, like, you know, energy and growth in this ecosystem. And, you know, I'm really excited to share a little bit about what we're up to. So Kubecost itself is purpose-built for teams that run containers and Kubernetes. So we help teams monitor, optimize, and govern, you know, their Kubernetes-related spend. Our entire founding team was at Google before starting the open source project. We were working on infrastructure monitoring projects with a focus on cost and performance and health. Everything we do is built on open source. We first launched our Kubecost open source project in 2019. Today we've got more than 5,000 organizations, FinOps and engineering teams using the project today, and this spans like major government entities as well as all the major cloud providers, as well as on-prem and even air-gapped environments, and managing billions of dollars of spend a day. So if we just jump to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about our approach, but it's fundamentally based in some of the core challenges that present themselves with moving to containers. And it's first and foremost that infrastructure tends to get way more dynamic when you move to containerization, right? You tend to have more complex scheduling decisions as a result of the Kubernetes scheduler. More and more teams are using auto scaling, and nodes are more likely to come up and go down, and you're more likely to be resilient, to that in terms of the use of microservices and other solutions. So as a result, having really granular and timely visibility is super, super valuable to actually understand, what is happening in those environments and enabling others to take action and ultimately manage spend effectively. As a result of all that, complexity, engineering teams are busier than ever, right? And tool chains are getting more complex. We have found it to be really valuable to empower engineering teams to optimize and manage spend themselves, as to bring data, bring insights, bring governance solutions to their tooling. So we see a lot of use and integration with things like Grafana and Prometheus, Alert Manager, Spinnaker, kubectl, all these tools that are kind of used every day in the Kubernetes world. And then lastly, a lot of Kubernetes environments are run in a multi-tenant fashion, right? Where once a tenant is in that environment, there's oftentimes not a lot of guardrails. They can spin up a lot of resources and consume, real dollars quickly. That's a great thing for the ability to scale rapidly and innovate. But when it comes to governance, it can be, like much more complex. So, we are big fans of introducing governance, directly in line with the Kubernetes environment. So those are some of the fundamental challenges we see. A little bit more about Kubecost. So again, everything we do is built on open source. We leverage the CNCF Open Cost project and are active contributors to that. And I'm really excited to see that progress in parallel with the really interesting focus effort. Again, supported in all major environments and used in a bunch of big Kubernetes environments. So that's a little bit about us. Excited for the panel chat further.
Yeah, and Webb's been a big contributor to the open source community for a long time at CNCF, and they helped launch Opencost over there and are contributing to our own open billing data project. So thanks, Webb, for doing open source right. And of course, before we get into it all, I wanted to thank all the folks who kind of helped make this possible. So the Linux Foundation is a membership-based organization, and these are the premier members of the FinOps Foundation program. The cloud's there on top, and then the others are sorted by when they joined the FinOps Foundation going back to 2020. So thank you all for helping to support this community. And to double click on community, a couple of people have reached out to me and said, well, WebEx webinars goes to 10,000 or Teams goes to this. I want to highlight, we're not on a webinar here. This is an open Zoom call. Zoom webinars will go to 10,000 too. We want you all to be able to talk. We want you to be able to see each other. We want you to be able to actually have that interaction at the beginning. So like, we don't do webinars, which is kind of why we've landed on this. And we want to keep this as small and focused as we can, getting the right people in here, which is why we balance that community. So thank you for the ideas on the technology, but until we find something that lets us do more than 1,000 open, we're going to stay here. Thank you also to longer tail of general members who support the foundation. These are consultancies and platforms who are also members, as well as some clouds in there, who have contributed across working groups and events as well. And with all of that introduction, well, you all came for the State of FinOps Report 2023. So I'm going to pass this over to Steve Trask on our team, who has been working for months to get this out the door, understand, analyze the data. And I think, Steve, oh gosh, I hope this is right. You have an announcement to make about the site as well?
Yes. Hey, everyone. It's great to see everyone back. Back for 2023, we can say data.finops.org has been updated about half an hour ago. Thank you very much, Sam Benson on the team. He's been working hard at kind of getting it ready for everyone to share. So I'd like to kind of like introduce the panel we have. Kim Weir from Target. We've got Jason Fuller from Here Technologies, Webb Brown from Kubecost. We've got Matt Weaver from Nike, myself, and Vaz from the FinOps Foundation team. We've been tag teaming this project, and it's going to be great to get these insights from everyone. But I'd like to say thank you to the 1,000 respondents we've had to the State of FinOps survey. It is still open. I will highlight that again at the end, and I'll explain why. But it really is a contribution to the community as it feeds so many different areas in the foundation itself. And we actually see the State of FinOps as a bit of a snapshot of the community. And it's really interesting to kind of see how that kind of like changes across the years as we've done this. It's the third year we've done it. If you go to the next slide. So as the foundation kind of grows, so does the cohort. So it's a bit of a caveat to kind of the data where it does slightly alter. We've definitely seen FinOps involves a range of levels across the organization, from contributor up to VPC level. We've actually seen an increase in percentage in those contributors and those managers, kind of expected with the growth of the foundation and the discipline across the globe. More larger organizations this year as well are doing FinOps, especially the 10,000 to 100,000 employee size. And then with the industries, we're seeing a long tail of industries kind of practicing FinOps. But we are seeing a kind of IT taking the lead this year, where typically it was sharing the lead with financial services. But financial services is still there as well as a big cohort of those involved in the practice. Professional services such as like advertising, media, retail. We've got telecoms, and again a long tail that kind of carries on. So one of the questions we get asked a lot, and it's slightly difficult to pin down over time, is to do with teams and team makeup. It really varies, because people kind of like, well, depends on who's on your team. Is that full-time? Is that part-time? It's quite a difficult data point to pin down. So if we move to the next slide, yes, there we go. And so we wanted to split this down by cloud spend. So as you can see, external consultants are similar at all spend sizes. And the data shows that dedicated contractors are more likely at higher spends. And again, employees kind of reflected that, but we did really kind of think, how does this relate to kind of maturity? So we wanted to understand that aspect, kind of like, so we flipped it and kind of split by maturity on the next slide. Oh, if you can move on. And then it indicated the slight kind of reverse with more employees at higher maturities, but we have to remember the broad kind of maturity usage, where really maturity is around individual capabilities. So we are looking at kind of like including more specifics around cloud spend this year, and how we kind of look at benchmarks per capability to judge maturity. Move to the next slide, JR. That's cool. So, and then we get this shows the kind of like the difference there, where it's like the higher maturity, we're having more employees. And then we also have the kind of the team numbers as well, kind of split out by spend. So, you know, growth of the team plans was slowed compared to indications in last year's data. And team sizes stayed pretty static at core walk sizes, where runs were slightly smaller than previous years. So again, it could be a sign of economic factors, and kind of there's been a lot of change in kind of organization structures and how organizations handle this. And then another aspect we really want to lean onto is the reporting structure. So we typically kind of look at the data previously, and we really pulled in a new set. So if we move to the next slide, it really kind of
question on this one from the chat. Is this spend, are these spend levels per month or per year?
I think it's annually.
Annually. So companies spending
Annually.
over $100 million a year in the public cloud tended to have 8 or so. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. So we try and tend to kind of roll those up. I'm happy to answer any questions as well. There's plenty of kind of time for that as well. So we looked at the reporting structure. So CTA is remaining stable as the most likely reporting structure. CIO has continued to slightly diminish over time. CFO has slightly grown since the start of the survey, but we've also seen a 64% reduction in those stating that they're still trying to figure this structure out. So it feels like it's becoming clearer, it's becoming more defined, but also we're having a reduction within those selecting multiple answers. It's very hard to do the year on year because of that reduction of multiple answers, because there's less dotted lines. It's kind of, they're becoming much more stable, definitely focused around that CTO. And we'll be looking to kind of share more information on a regional aspect on this, because I know in our last event in London itself, the COO in EMEA is higher. So we'll definitely kind of bring that data to the Amsterdam Community Day. And now I think we just want to kind of, what's a real world example of this? And that's where we'd like to kind of introduce Matt Weaver from Nike, just to kind of like talk over his team.
Sorry to interrupt you. I think Matt is not on yet. It sounds like he's slightly delayed. So I'm wondering, maybe we should go to a couple questions from the panel in relation to these slides while he's joining. I think Matt is dropping some kiddos off at school. It's 8:30 in the morning here in the Pacific time zone.
Yeah, sure. So if we can kind of go to kind of Jason, for example, I'd like to understand kind of like, how do you use contractors, consultants with your teams? Is that something you do use, or are you kind of dedicated on the employee front?
No, really good question. We use a very distributed approach to our cloud building and cloud maintenance. And so ultimately what we see is, as teams, service teams take certain recommendations from us, they'll choose whether they can implement that themselves, they need to go to an ETL, or they may already have an outsourced partner that they're working with to support that solution. Generally, the central team has a couple of metrics. It's a bit of a bar raising event for us, right? So how much are you going to save from the activity? Can the activity be easily deployed into the environment safely? You know, risk-free is always good, but you know, low risk, as you heard Dave say at the beginning, going on the offensive was a risky behavior. So, you know, how can we minimize that risk? And then the access required, right? So, you know, we are also the enterprise owners of things like AWS organizations, or the the Azure portal, the top level, Oracle tenant. And so we know how to kind of gather those things, and our team generally doesn't act on a time bound approach. Obviously, savings diminishes every minute that I'm sitting here. We're spending, this money, but we look at it as it's better to be safe and sustainable than fast and just find ourselves here in another month or next year, or and we've all seen that, right? Repeat every Q1, you're going to do this activity, and they kind of knock your head against the same spot on the wall, going, why didn't that hold tight in the FinOps tech stack? But that's generally how we use our externals. There are lots of great ones out there at this point. Cloud's pretty understood. So
that's great. I was going to say, Kim, can you give an aspect on kind of like team size? Are you kind of like, you're very mature practice? Are you kind of like, how big is your team? What's your plans for the future with your team as well?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that we do at Target is we are building our own solutions in-house. So we actually have a development team. So the efficiency engineering team is roughly between 15 and 20 people, depending on the day. So we have one team that's super focused on doing analytics and pulling together leadership dashboards and watching for anomalies and actually consulting and partnering with the development teams to help, with optimization. And then we have one team that's specifically about bringing the data in and normalizing that data, making sure we have accurate and consistent data. And then we have that development team. So that's how we've been doing it at Target. So I feel like we have a really large team, but when you're developing your own solutions, that's really necessary.
Yeah, okay, totally get that. Do we want to move down to the top pain points, Joe? I'm just thinking unless Matt is already on.
Actually, I think Matt is on. So
yes.
Matt, I'm going to get you to unmute. Matt is dialing in from the cell phone because I think he hit the 1,000-person cap. So hopefully we can hear from him shortly. 1 second. Nope, looks like we lost him.
I think he's getting kicked
there
out.
He is. I see Matt now as a person, not just a cell phone.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Matt.
Hey, thanks. I was switching my AirPods over from my phone, which I was on radio, to now video, which is great.
Perfect.
Thanks for being flexible. I was trying to get in and you broke Zoom evidently, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to quick, oh, hi, Dina. Good to see you. I see you doing the chat there. Dina and I go way back. So I just wanted to join you real quick to talk about, I know cut a little bit there. We've been talking about the growth of certain teams and direction and stuff. This is just a little bit, couple minutes on my team at Nike. I just want to quick say that, Nike has a technology budget that is larger than a lot of companies. So we have a lot of cloud spend. I have a slide here, next slide, that shows you a little bit generically of the growth, not the amount, not the clouds. So we keep it very, very tight here. But I want to let you know that the growth we're seeing is probably not atypical to what the industry is seeing. That's 30 plus, even 41% year-over-year growth. Where we really got attention was right in the mid 2022, where we started to spike. And that's when we got attention from our CIO. We also had a consulting firm come in and really get us kick-started, because we're a very small team. At the time, we had 2 people as analysts, myself as director, and then we brought in 2 developers. So the person who was talking from Target, we're also developing internal products ourselves. But we had this large cost optimization product that gave us CIO level visibility. And as you can see, we've been able to not flatten the growth, but level off the growth of the curve, which is what we want to do. And then the next slide, I want to give you just a quick story about our team. I told you we had those 2 analysts and 2 developers. We are growing more than double that. We are adding 7 roles right now, of which two of them have been hired, and we have 5 still in the hiring phase. I've got interviews today. I've been interviewing all last week and the week before. So we're growing our analyst group to 6 people. And that's not only to do the liaison type of work, but also to dive deep into the data. We want to really get down to understanding what it is happening in the cloud. We're also working hard on tagging and other things to get us that data. And then on the development side, I'm going to have a principal engineer and 4 developers by this point, let's say mid-March. So that's a really good story on our side. We're able to build the products that we need to do the things that Nike needs to. Not all the products out there can handle all the little nuances that we do. So we are at least supplementing those products, if not building our own internally. So hopefully that gives you just a quick understanding of where we're at and a good story there.
That's awesome. Quick question from the chat, which I was actually also going to ask, was about the analyst roles. Are the analyst individuals this is from Kara Mosley from Coke, are the analysts from individuals with technical or financial backgrounds or a mix of both? Like, what is an analyst in your world?
Mix. Yeah, it's a mix. It depends on the situation. Like the analyst, the not senior analyst, I'm looking for anybody who's got a financial background or a technical background who wants to come into the middle. Sometimes I find it easier to take a financial person and train them in cloud versus a technical person and train them in the financial side. But we're finding a good mix of people. And then on the senior analyst side, some of those are going to be the liaison roles, and some of those are going to be like data analytics and really super technical people who are not interested in coding necessarily, but they can work with our engineering team to develop the products that we need based upon their knowledge.
And then one more question before we let you go, Matt, we get back into the panel. There's one about from Alan Bowman. Do business lines across Nike have their own embedded FinOps teams, or do you manage it all centrally? Or is it, I'm adding it?
We manage it centrally right now. I'd love to say at some point down the road, we're going to have embedded analysts, but we don't have quite that much support yet. But I'd love to get there.
Excellent. I know there's always a debate on which way to go there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Matt, if you want to stay on, we're going to jump back into the panel, but feel free to jump in with additional commentary as it goes. And I love that you're wearing the Nike gear. I feel like you all, every time I see anybody from Nike, they always have it on, representing the brand.
That's all I have.
That's the best way.
Wearing your own Vans t-shirt. I get it. School gear. Thanks.
Cool. So moving on to kind of like the top pain points. This is where people selected their 3 top challenges that they're looking at. I just wanted to call out the kind of arrows and what they indicate. So the arrows indicate percentage directional change, not positional change. So for example, the top one is kind of rooted from last year. It's empowering engineers to take action. It was only 0.5% drop, so not really a big move. But we did have a kind of like a new challenge that was put on the kind of the survey this year. Getting the unit economics came in straight at number 2, which was great to see, and also how close these were compared to last year. I think it was 10% difference between 2 and 5 last year, and I think this year it's just below 1%. So there's definitely kind of a bunching of the top ones. There is more that's kind of not shown here. We just want to kind of clear those. Another big growth area is a 30% increase in reducing waste. It came up, but also a drop off for forecasting. It was a 17% drop in forecasting, and we can kind of dig into that capability in a bit. But another indicator, I know we could probably get to the panel on this, is the 15% increase in container cost challenge as well. So that's also an increase there. So Kim, do any of these changes resonate with you, or kind of like what's the biggest challenge at your organization Target at the moment?
Yeah, I think the changes resonate with me. I think the drop in forecasting is likely a sign of maturity of this whole organization and how we're maturing along the crawl, walk, run. And then I think that the enabling automation is really a little of challenge, and just like, how do you get that done? So at Target, I think our biggest challenge is really getting into that enabling automation. It's so complex. It requires so much data. For us, it requires partnering with more platform teams and figuring out how to actually do that automation to make the engineer's job easier.
Yeah, that's totally makes sense. We've got some actually interesting information on automation coming in a bit, and kind of progress along there as well. moving to Jason. Jason, what are the challenges here? Technologies, you're quite advanced as well. Do you kind of resonate with these at the larger spends? Is it around the governance and policy at scale? What kind of is like your top challenges?
Yeah, I think our biggest challenge is figuring out from an organizational perspective. You have the generations of L1, the CEO and his direct reports, all the way to an L6, L7 layer that have different needs to see data in different ways. Your CFO may want to understand the utilization by leader or by sector or by business unit, and he's gonna push for things like I need to see how many he just continues to use just servers and assets. And when you're dealing with tens of millions of hours of BC2, you have to find a way to form that up into one or two key metrics that they can use at that level. But then down into the engineering levels, cost reporting for us is to the penny, 100% allocated, and there are 3 layers of allocation. Right? There's direct AWS, or I use AWS, but it's the same on others. Right? AWS direct allocation, which is where our engineering FinOps Central team focuses on. We then have a container solution in-house that we use, which then takes a secondary, if you think of Kubernetes, it's namespaces, pods, and these sense of things. And then there's the usage up on top, the people who are internally supporting either AAA, or they're supporting in our map making. We do things in tiles, and so there's certain data elements that are stored technically close to where it should be, but it is really driven by other teams, and so there's a 3rd layer of allocation that comes in. And so you can imagine when you open your bill, internal bill each month from finance, you have to understand those things as a middle engineering director, and so those are challenging. But I think our years of experience there have gotten people very comfortable with the idea that, okay, this one I can control and I can go change, and I can take Jason and Dave's recommendation and go implement it myself. This one I have to go work with the platform team to get something there, and this one is just in my usage of the service and it's a customer demand or something like this. It adds its own layer of challenges, but I think teams are generally pretty open to understanding savings and utilization or key metrics across all vertical and horizontal layers, and so it'll prioritize in the backlog. If it doesn't, there's a good escalation path internal to make that a priority.
Yeah, I like how you're kind of looking at challenges, kind of like different personas and what they for. I think we're looking definitely how to improve these questions as they go on. It's kind of like, where are your biggest challenges for this persona, or trying to solve for those. Just moving to Webb, it's kind of like, I know we've had an interesting conversation in the kind of prep for this, is the connection between challenges. Things are kind of not solely siloed off. What do you think is driving the kind of like the container cost? I know your specialism is there. Is that kind of, we see it connected to the empowering engineers, or kind of what's your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. I think first, this is fascinating data, and wow, it looks so different from when this report was first compiled. I think there's kind of 3 things at play here. One is just the rapid adoption of containers and Kubernetes themselves, right? So today, now millions of developers using containers. I believe more than 2/3 of the Fortune 2000 using containers and Kubernetes in some fashion. I think secondly is, for most teams, the way they're using Kubernetes, it's multi-tenant, it's shared infrastructure. So all of a sudden, a lot of the mechanisms to doing things like machine or VM tagging kind of don't translate, or just reporting has gotten more complex as a result of that. And then third, I think, is just what you mentioned, Steve, which is we see a lot of teams, given the macro environment, jumping to waste reduction. Well, that in parallel to transition to containers and Kubernetes, it's, well, we don't even have the reporting in place to agree on where we're spending, right, across service, across project, et cetera. So it almost feels like it bubbles it up as a precursor to, again, be able to address waste, and then work closely with engineering to actually accomplish that.
Yeah, the big call out is that increase in reducing waste. It's definitely a potential external factors driving that as a priority within the business as well. We want to move on to the next kind of data point. We've got quite a few slides to get through, so I'm going to hand across to Vaz to kind of talk around the capabilities and how the priorities have changed. Vaz, are you there?
Hey, Steve, thanks. Yeah, I just also want to echo Webb here that this data is really fascinating. It's been a lot of fun splunking through the data with you, preparing for this summit. And it's great to see all of that questions in the Zoom chat. So this previous slide on pain points is a nice segue into how respondents prioritized FinOps capabilities. And similar to the last slide, the arrows on the far right of this slide isn't a positional change. It's sort of the survey respondents ranking from 0 to 10 on what they thought was a priority for them. And it's probably worth calling out here, there are some foundational framework capabilities that really unlock other functions in a FinOps practice, like cost allocation, no surprises at the top. But going to the panel, and Kim, would love to get your thoughts on, if you look at the bottom of this chart and you look at things like workload management and automation, or intersecting with other frameworks like ITAM or sustainability, do you think these are at the bottom because they're hard to do, or because they're just not as important for folks? Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so like everything, I think the answer is both. So I think when I look at this, the FinOps intersection with other frameworks, that might be low because maybe we just naturally integrate with them. And so we don't have to spend as much time focusing on that. So maybe there's just that natural integration. But as I said earlier, the workload management and the automation, that is so difficult that as you're maturing from crawl, walk, run, getting out of crawl, you might not be at that point yet where that's even a priority for you and your team, because of the complexity and the difficulty associated with it. So it does make sense that these are all at the bottom, but I think the answer is it could be both, difficult and just that we haven't been able to prioritize it yet.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We like to joke and say a lot of doing FinOps well, it depends, and I think that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. And one thing that's also interesting about this chart is this year establishing a FinOps culture is again right at the top. And can you speak to the community about sort of how Target tackles education and training around FinOps, and sort of from your own experience, any thoughts you have around helping employees, enabling employees to adopt FinOps?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on this. So from a training and education perspective, I think about, people in this community were probably either really strong in finance or were really strong in engineering, but we're not really specialists in learning and development. And so we might not approach the whole learning conversation or creating those formal learning programs because of that. But at Target, what we've done to establish that FinOps culture is really, it comes down to the near real-time data and presenting that. We have a cadence and some routines where we're meeting with our cloud consumers on a monthly basis to show how we're doing from an optimization perspective, from a cloud spend perspective. So it's really the outreach that I think is helping us to be more successful. And then hopefully someday we'll find that connection to more of our leadership and development training hat and get driving those as well.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, thanks for sharing your thoughts there. And I just want to also take a moment and encourage folks that are listening to please, add your thoughts to the Zoom chat or to Slack. And keep the conversation going. As Steve touched on, we definitely want to refine and ensure that we're surfacing valuable information to the community. On that note, I think maybe
can I jump in with a
Yeah.
question and a comment for anybody in the panel? There've been a couple questions and mentions about sustainability in the chat, and I'll throw out, because this was just a conversation that we were having with some of the Technical Advisory Council recently, is that we see sustainability not as a part of FinOps, but as a parallel discipline, and there's a lot of overlaps, right? You use less carbon, but there's also some counterpoints to sustainability in FinOps. Like if you commit and buy a savings plan on something you're not using, you're actually locking in carbon emissions. So we see, I think, I'm saying we, as this is a thought that the staff is working with the Technical Advisory Council to formalize, is that sustainability would fit into that bottom one, which is intersection with other frameworks. And I'm curious for the panelists, how you all see sustainability tying in, with the capabilities. And does it overlap? Is it another data set you're bringing in, or do you see this part of FinOps?
I'll jump in on that, JR, because we've been doing a ton of work with our sustainability teams. As an industry, sustainability is a little further behind than financial institutions, not because we don't all understand what it is, but because the formalization of frameworks that allow for consistent practices across corporate domains is still being written. So you can pick your favorite third party. You might not like what they're asking. You might move to something else. But the other part of sustainability that we see critical here is that it's still also very focused on IT assets, physical assets, employee assets, digital assets, certainly software licenses and these things. But at our scale, when we start putting our cloud numbers on the sustainability board, it's a bit like trying to look at a graph where everybody is the tiny little 0 to 1, and we're now up in the top, trending. And so it just draws attention. Right. And so the reason why the Cloud FinOps team gets involved is because they have access to data. They're a trusted data shepherd within the company. And the team tends to be able to quickly spin around and say, you have, say, 1 million hours of use in this product over here last week. That equals this much money. And what we're now working on is retrofitting all of those tools we use for FinOps to, instead of produce out a euro, dollar, yen, start producing a ton. Right. And so we're working with the cloud providers, we're working with the middle architecture teams to say, how do I show this in a sustainability dimension so that we can easily adopt the same culture, which is you shouldn't use more than you need to because it costs too much. Well, you shouldn't use more than you need to because it produces a targeting exercise for sustainability. And what we expect is in the next, easily the next 5 years, we think 2030 is probably the reality. This starts to become one of those major drivers, absolute necessary by government dictate drivers for your use of technology. And it's already become a conversation piece in sales RFPs and these sorts of things, but we think it'll get much more standardized here in the next the later half of this decade.
Thanks for jumping in there. It sounds like a few people in the chat resonated with your comments.
I was going to say there is some sustainability data that we collected this year about how people are doing it and are they integrating KPIs. I'm not saying everyone should go to the website right now. They should finish the content here, but yes, it's definitely it's on there. If you search sustainability, there are kind of like who's ingesting it, how many people are ingesting it, and some new sustainability questions from the survey this year as well.
Yeah, and it's such an important topic, and there's a lot of keen interest from the community. So, JR, thanks for pulling that out of the Zoom chat, and that was a great tangent to kind of focus on for the data that we're walking through today. And actually, if we kind of go to the next slide, what we're going to look at next is sort of a companion slide to the slide we were just on, and really what we're looking at here is sort of the capabilities that were prioritized by respondents in the previous slide. Now what we're doing in this slide is unpacking each one and looking sort of how maturity cohorts are surfaced within each capability. And then just to kind of make the data interesting, what we also did is we sorted the data by run maturity from highest to lowest. So take a moment to kind of take the data in. This slide is interesting, but also a little bit complex. But keep in mind that what we're trying to do here is unpack maturity within each capability. And some things to highlight here as well is this slide kind of lines up with our pain points as well as our priorities that respondents answered in the survey, and things like cost allocation and getting charge back and show back, going into an organization, looking at the maturity there between crawl, walk, run. Forecasting and anomalies are sitting high in maturity. And, for me, when we were looking at this data, Steve, I think we talked about this in preparation for the meeting, is, some of the capabilities here, it's nice to take a moment and kind of focus on the nuance in FinOps maturity, which is not every capability needs to be at run. Where you invest in terms of improving your practice for a particular capability needs to make sense for your business. And key capabilities like resource and utilization are as low as automation if you look at this chart. So kind of going back to the panel, Jason, would love to hear your perspective on the bottom two capabilities through the lens of your experiences at Here Technologies.
Yeah, thanks, Faz. I think from our side of this, having done this now for over 10 years as a company, it's almost the well, it's like the old saying, right? Everything that's old comes around again, right? So we do run into teams who have completely forgotten infrastructure because it's become so normalized and it's become so easy and it's just there and it's working. So they've really focused investment on development of features and attrition and other things that they've lost that. And so when we look at these things, I take it in two fronts, right? I look at how do I help? I have very highly skilled engineers on my FinOps team that can do things, work their magic, and we're happy to always win together as a group. But then on the other side, how do I bring education and how do I have a good balance there? And I'll say in the last 2 years, the big focus has been on highly complex workloads running in containerized solutions on the engineering side, and that's the education that people tend to pull on most from our LMS data. And the other is actually in the financial group. And if I look back 5 years ago, I think I asked at reInvent how many finance people were in the room at a talk I was giving, and only 2 people raised their hands out of a few thousand. So it's definitely swinging that way. And finance folks don't want to take a cloud engineering course because it's not their day job. They're never going to open an account, start poking at it the way that those courses are built. It's really this FinOps foundation type trainings that need to go in, and so we're seeing a bit of that there. But yeah, it's a constant state of improvement, right? It's not a good day or a bad day. It's a constant that we see.
Thanks, Jason. And also just to take a moment, JR, are there any questions in the Zoom chat that are worth pulling out and chatting about here?
Oh, so many. Also, I'll call out
any interesting ones that caught your eye.
If anybody else is thinking it, we know this chart is confusing, and I know a few people are thinking about clarity on it. This is sorted by run stage, right? So the capabilities on the left that had the highest percentage of those who considered themselves or we rated at the run stage, were in that run stage, are on the left. The capabilities on the right had the lowest percentage of runners in it, right? So you had a smaller amount of advanced users in automation on the right and the largest amount of advanced users in cost allocation on the left. So just wanted to clarify that. That wasn't, in case that wasn't clear to anyone else.
Yeah,
it's very much around comparing each capability to themselves rather than kind of anything else. But there's some amazing questions in the chat, which definitely got me thinking about individual capability maturity sliced by number of years of experience. So yeah, there's definitely some good conversations going to happen.
Yeah, I also like how this chart sort of supports the previous chart, which was sort of, we saw that capabilities around managing shared cost sort of dropped in priority for respondents. And if you look at this chart and you kind of unpack why would it drop in priority, we have a high number of folks that responded that they were at a walk or at a run level. And so this may be an example of where, the cost sharing capability is good enough at the moment, and folks are choosing to kind of tackle and prioritize other things. Steve, is this a good segue to the next slide?
One more question on this. It's personal interest, and I was about to say it came from the chat, but it's not. It's actually coming from me. So I was and continue to continually being surprised to see that managing commitment-based discounts has such low maturity in a world where we're 8 years into reserved instances and 3 years into AWS savings plans, and now have Azure and Google equivalents of saving. Azure has savings plans, Google has Flex CUDs. I mean, Webb, we haven't heard much from you. Maybe I'll pass this to you from what you've seen, but like what and the rest of the panel, why is that so low? And also, given the focus on saving money, why do you think we're not seeing more focus in that area in terms of, other questions and pain points for the community?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'd actually be really interested in responses from others on this topic. I see a couple things. One, and I think this may be a sample bias for those that we work with, is we're way more likely to work with FinOps and engineering teams that are deep in the CTO's world, right? So really technical teams when we work with containers, and they tend to just be less familiar with the finance side of the house. So they tend to start with what we talk about as usage or workload optimization before they start thinking about rate optimization. I think that's one. I think second is, in our world of containers, where things tend to be really dynamic and are oftentimes hard to predict, I think teams can be reluctant to say we are ready to make a major 3-year or long-term financial commitment when there's so many moving parts and there's so many things that we're still figuring out, given that we're new to containers. So those are a couple observations on my side, but again, would be really interested to hear if others have thoughts as well.
Tim, are you all advanced in this area? Do you consider yourself runners? I know you're heavy on other types of optimization.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so if I understand, I was multitasking. So you guys are talking about rate optimization?
Why is managing commitment-based discounts, rate optimization, CDs, flex CDs, savings plans, RIs, why is the maturity so low there, given their importance to cost and the maturity of those offerings from the cloud providers?
Yeah, I agree with what Webb was saying. His last point where he was talking about the difficulty in forecasting it and then committing to it. Things change within your organization. And when you do some sort of rate commitment, you're locked into that for that 1 year or that 3-year term. But what if you find that some other compute type is more efficient and you could squeeze more juice out of it, but now you're locked into a rate and a commitment that you have to stay. So I think that is one reason why that might be a little less mature. I mean, it could just be the whole, when you get into the whole FinOps practice, it's like the low hanging fruit. What can you do today? And then mature along the line. That could be another reason why it's lower.
That's great. I know
JR, if I can.
Yeah, I was going to do. Yeah, go ahead, Jason. We're going to move forward. I'm getting pinged, but yes, please.
Yeah, so I think I think it is all dependent on the culture, but it's for us in 2016, it was more about making sure that commitment wasn't the problem, right? And so seeing a lot in the chat about leaders don't want to commit. Today's cloud provider will go right for the CTO's inbox, right for the CEO's inbox, and offer the world when it comes to commitments and give you so many percentages off and all these things. But the reality of actually managing a good RI savings plan or a good alternative commit, you can't just buy the 1-3. We did for a long time, right? No upfronts, Linux only, blah blah blah. That's easy, right? You'll write automation once a month to read your savings plan recommendation, tell it never to buy more than 85% coverage, and just let it buy. But I think now you see tooling out there in the marketplace that actually is using convertibles much more, market sells. It's becoming a brokered event. And so you need to have both the financial skill and the engineering skill to really compete with the likes of somebody like Spot.io or Prospect Ops or any of these guys, Cloud Wiring, right? So You can commercially buy it and get an SLA, and they'll take you right to 100%, and they'll stay up with the architecture. But what we did early on is we did block reserved instance saving plan purchasing from a team level. We said we will take that on ourselves in the FinOps Foundation, because then we're not worried about the commitment. You don't have to analyze the data. We're just going to fast follow you around. The truth being is their architectural changes are much more critical and happen slower, to be honest, than I can buy every month a upkeep maintenance level once I've hit 80-90% coverage. So but yeah, it's removing that fear of commitment. And to be honest, like how easy is it for you to move off of your cloud provider today? Like if you've tried, it's not, and it's not desirable either.
I thought containers were meant to fix that interoperability.
Yeah, sure. We can talk offline about that.
I clearly opened to Hornet's Nest. If you all are looking in the comments, there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of great comments. People are sending me direct messages on it. It's clearly an area that we need to spend more time on. Really important clarification point. This chart is not saying what people think is the most important. This chart is saying where are the runners, crawlers, and walkers within it. So it wasn't how do we think are important? What we have, talking fast, on the left, sorted by run, more people were in a run stage for cost allocation. It's not they said that was more important. On the right, sorted by run, less people in an automation run state. So we clearly need to clarify this graph. I'm going to move us forward because there's still a couple more things that we still want to cover with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to dig in on the breakout as well on this, just to kind of clarify.
Yeah, we have a breakout, so we can talk more about it. But definitely telling stories with charts is hard for anyone who's prepared slides.
Actually, yeah, I knew this chart was going to be difficult to communicate, but yeah, I was going to say we're moving on to allocation, and I know we've got to move forward because we've got quite a number of slides to get through. But it's a key priority. I just want to flag the y-axis there is percentage of respondents. So this is, again, it's kind of like how are we're asking a question around how much they can allocate, and that's where we're defining kind of who is walk, crawl, run. The thresholds we kind of put on there on the right hand side. Anything equal to up to 80% is crawl, and then run is greater than 90% that kind of spend that they can allocate. And this is year on year from 2022 to 2023. So you can really see the kind of increase in maturity, how it's progressing, and that's in relation to the previous chart. You can see how that's split. So we have seen a progression from 21% to 28% of the run segment. But yeah, it's nicely to see these capabilities maturing and people getting these, but it's still a key priority, and there's plenty kind of like to move through to the run maturity if they're wanting to kind of do that. I want to jump onto the next slide. I can kind of like explain the kind of the aspect. So forecasting itself, the maturity on the right hand side, this is not asking people where do you think you are mature, as in are you run, walk, or crawl. It's from the answers they provided, and then we applied thresholds to that. So therefore we can kind of put respondents into a bucket rather than kind of it's self-identified. It's not self-identified. That was last year's. This year is very much about what their responses were to be able to put them into a certain maturity phase. Again, there's going to be more on the website around this, on each capability about where you can kind of sit. That's very much focused on forecasting variance, what percentage variance you have within your forecasting. But the main chart itself was really kind of showing the year-on-year change of the increased frequency within forecasting that's happening. There's a 52% decrease in those doing it annually, and a big increase in kind of like the monthly and even getting to the weekly phase. So it's definitely kind of a capability that people are progressing in. It's definitely maturing. I think that's the overall FinOps is maturing in certain aspects, but other capabilities are still too mature. Kim, with the data shifting in frequency from annually and quarterly to monthly, what do you think the potential triggers are for this to make this happen? And how does that work at Target as well?
I keep muting myself, and then I can't unmute, so I have to wait.
That's okay.
So I've looked at this slide, and it's really interesting that the monthly forecasting has increased so much, so significantly. And when I first was looking at it, I thought, wow, that must mean that people are really getting confident in their forecasting ability, and that forecasting is just now a mature practice for the FinOps Foundation, the whole, our community. But then as I looked at it more and saw that for 2023, less than 10% of the respondents indicated that they were doing forecasting on an annual basis. And so I was thinking about that, and maybe that's a sign that there's just still so much volatility in the cloud industry between migrations and moving workloads into the cloud and new development. Maybe there's still a challenge for the FinOps community to understand how on an annual basis their cloud is going to grow and scale. And so it's easier to do that forecasting activity on a monthly basis because it's contained, it's only 30, 31 days. But on an annual basis, it's really a lot more difficult because you don't know, what applications are going to migrate, what aren't going to migrate, what new development is coming up. So I think that's a reflection of this slide, is that there's still so much volatility out there. For Target, we are in a bit more of a stable state. So we know essentially what's going to be running in our public cloud. We have a huge private cloud offering at Target. So from our public cloud perspective, we have gotten to a maturity point of being able to produce a forecast on an annual basis, and it's fairly accurate. And then we are able to track our costs on a monthly basis to see if we're trending up or trending down. So we have those conversations on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis.
Yeah, it's interesting how the correlation of this being less of a challenge as well. That 17% drop as a challenge is forecasting, but it's increased the frequency. And these things are all tying together: priorities, the challenges, and kind of like the maturities.
So Steve, which of the slides do you want to end on here? And reminder, we have the breakout session. So at the end of this, if you want to keep talking State of FinOps, we can keep going deeper. But which point do you want to end on?
I really want to end on like 54, number 54. So it's kind of actually kind of like what's available and what people can kind of see. Because we can carry on this discussion in the breakout, because there are some great points.
You can see
I've been taking notes in the chat as well about unit economics and all these things. I'm like, this is a great question. This is a great question. So I know, but we do want to kind of highlight the website has been updated. You can search by capability. You can kind of like search. We're even kind of like adding different years data in there as well. So you can also expand it. You can kind of then click through to the capability where you can then look at the kind of like the benchmarks, thresholds around that capability as well. And you can also add your own data into the State of FinOps 2023. We are keeping it open for a while. So we can then do a refresh of those benchmarks, keep this updated, and come back to the community and serve all the working groups and such forth. But yeah, please let's carry the conversation on in the breakout, and yeah, let's continue that conversation.
Yeah, and I want to highlight what's in the chat. When our team saw this as well, we kind of jaw dropped, like, how did you pull it? So Steve, his team with Sam Benson, who's our web designer, and Andrew Nim and Tom Sharp, who's our designer, did amazing work. They all did this in-house, and it not only is pretty, it's now, as Mike highlighted in the chat, it now integrates into the capabilities, right? And that's just a big step up. So yeah, thank you everybody for the work on this. Amazing stuff, and a lot more to come. So as a lot of you Mitch saw, the second edition of the book is finally shipping. Thank you to everybody who contributed. We had 55 contributors to this book. There's a long list of acknowledgements in the beginning. Thank you. I couldn't even start to list them all out right now. Especially big thank you to our tech reviewers, and as well all the people who've been sort of providing feedback along the way. We're going to put together some takeaways from this book, which is there's sort of 8 new big areas. Mike Fuller, my co-author, has recently joined the FinOps Foundation as our CTO. He's now full-time with us. Unfortunately, he's in Australia, so it's 2 a.m. for him, but looking forward to getting him on to share more about this. If you read the book and you like it, we unfortunately reset to 0 reviews when the second edition came out, so consider sharing your thoughts. And yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here that I think is trying to summarize really everything the community is doing from these open source working groups and a lot of the info. Excellent. So with that, and unfortunately, this question on promo codes for the book, Unfortunately, I have to buy my own copies of the book as well. Well, I take it back. O'Reilly sent me 10 as a welcome gift. They also sent 10 to Mike Fuller. Funny story, they were stolen off his porch in Australia. He has a video of someone stealing them. So unfortunately, even when the FinOps Foundation or I want to give any beyond my 10, I have to buy them. So we can get a bulk discount from O'Reilly if anybody wants to do that. I have found the best place, like when we're buying our own, we buy them off Amazon because they ship them everywhere and it's easiest, and the price will probably continue to come down there. So wish I could offer some help there. I don't have any levers to pull even for buying beyond my first 10 because O'Reilly has very strong content rights and how they manage those things. So excellent. With that, I want to pass over to Samantha on our team to talk about all the great progress on the working groups and hear about some of those outputs.
Thanks, JR. So our working groups are small groups of you folks, our community members, who get together to advance FinOps practitioners in their practice and establish best practices by focusing their efforts on a particular FinOps activity to understand and conquer various challenges with the ultimate goal of producing valuable content for the rest of you all. And so as of right now, we've got about 9 active groups, which you can see here. One group developing a working group proposal and many, many more, which have graduated outputs. You can also visit our community events page to see when these working groups are meeting and request to join these working groups if you're interested in any of these. Next slide, please. And our project overview page will also show a complete listing of those active working groups and allow you to submit an idea for new working groups. There's a lot of chatter earlier going on in chat about working group on commitments. So I've written down some names. Thanks for that. If you have any additional ideas, I encourage you to go to that project's overview page to submit your idea. A lot of our ideas are really inspired by you folks in the community. So we appreciate that. And I did just want to do a little poll, pick your brains on what type of working groups you might be interested in, because we do have a short list in the backlog. So if you could go to the next slide, we've got a handful of ideas here that have been floated previously for working groups. And I just want to hear from you all. Are there any of these topics that interest you most, something you want to learn more about? And we'll consider moving those forward into active groups based upon your results. I can't promise anything, but just want to get some feedback from you folks. So appreciate your time providing insight.
Can you see the results as they're coming in here? Are you seeing it?
I can see the results are coming in. So far, KPIs is the leader. We've got about 70% of votes heading there, and then reducing waste. Funny enough, we really are kind of trending, you know, #1 on the list here is #1 in the poll, and so on and so forth. So that's too interesting. Thanks, folks, for your input. Poll's still open, so you can vote a little while longer. But up next, I'll tell you, we have 2 working groups visiting us today to provide an update on their efforts and accomplishments. We have Anthony from the Unit Economics Working Group, and then Alex will be presenting on behalf of the ITFM TBM Working Group. But first up is Anthony.
Hey, everybody, how you doing?
Hey, perfect. Okay.
So for Unit Economics for this sprint, what we decided to do was create a deck specifically for practitioners to bring the concept of Unit Economics into the organization, specifically into their organization, by having a definition for Cloud Unit Economics, talking about some benefits, personas, some framework intercepts, and then really how do you start the journey? Next slide, please. So this is 4 of about a dozen or so slides that we have in the deck. We can't go through all of them due to time limits, but just a really quick definition. Analytical approach aimed at maximizing the business value of cloud initiatives. And this is really kind of at the core of what Unit Economics can do. You know, we've had some conversations about, is it a KPI? Is it an OKR? Is it a Unit Economics? So we kind of try to define that a little bit better for everybody. So this one talks about marginal metrics, whether it's unit costs, unit revenue, and taking the gross unit profit as a calculation of both of those. And some of the desired outcomes that we're really looking for is when you get through the Unit Economics and you have these measurements in place and you go through it, you know, what's the forecast profitability, right? How do you bring engineering to understand gross profit contributions that they have? You know, this is really about creating a measurement that helps you understand how to plan what you're going to do next. Is typically a unit economic measurement is going to give you an action to take based upon the scoring or the data sets that you have. Really looking at supporting contribution margins. And these are a couple of different business related unit economics, cloud unit economics components. So customer lifetime value, customer acquisition cost. You know, we look at 3 different categories of these kind of unit economics. We look at engineering, we look at finance, we look at business. And so typically within your career, you've touched some of these around. Some of the key principles, remember there was no single metric that rules the world, right? So this is just a group of metrics that you look at that are basically persona-based that help you do that. You want to work close to users in a workflow and how they develop these particular unit economic measurements. Collaboration to define, so important to work with these other members and these other teams to figure out how you're going to produce this measurement and is it really what they expect the outcome to be. These should be managed centrally and maintained centrally because there's so many different people that are putting forth stuff that doesn't get circulated. We need to make an acceptable target to whatever this is going to be. I guarantee you the people that are looking at these measurements already know what that target should be, and they're going to help you manage where that's going to go. So now you have, you know, where you're going to go with the desired outcomes, kind of the key principles you're going to start with. How do you really start? So you start with setting early objectives by working with different people. You're going to identify the stakeholders, you're going to identify the metrics, and I want to say candidate metrics because this evolves over time. You're going to work with and educate stakeholders that it may be different from the original stakeholders. You're going to set some goals. You're going to collect the data. This is probably the most complicated part, more technical more than anything. Validate test metrics with the stakeholders, integrate the metrics and the KPIs or other things that you want to work with, right? So that distinction of KPIs is what I see as more outcome-based, and the unit economics is more measuring more long-term with certain cadences that you want to look at. And then track the progress. That's the easiest thing that we can do. Next slide, please. So we just want to let everybody know this is the team that works on this. Everybody works diligent and hard to create these documents, specifically this deck. I mean, this took some time to get through. So I just want to thank you all for your contribution, and hopefully everybody can learn from the deck. Don't forget to hit the chat unit economics if you have any questions or anything you need help with. That's it. Thanks, JR.
Really great work, TJ and team. It's been cool to see that one evolve. I know you're in your, I think, 3rd iteration now, roughly. So looking forward to more hot topic. And I think next we have Alex Hullah from Goldman Sachs up next for the ITFM TBM Working Group. This, by the way, falls under that capability that we were talking about earlier of the intersection of other frameworks into FinOps. Alex, over to you.
Thanks, JR. Hello, FinOps friends. Good to see you all again. Just to give a quick update on FinOps and TBM and ITFM. So as a quick reminder, TBM is Technology Business Management and ITFM is IT Financial Management. These are both disciplines that, whilst they traditionally kind of grew up managing on-premise in-house IT costs, have kind of expanded to cover kind of total scope of IT spend. So if you're primarily you're doing FinOps within a large or kind of enterprise scale operation, you may find that you actually have one of these teams already in place, kind of doing kind of certain elements of other types of IT costing. And so how do we work together? Should we work together? What should we work together on? So this working group was put together to understand kind of what are the challenges, what are the opportunities of actually working kind of across these two disciplines. How would these teams work together? What do they work together on? What type of information needs to be shared? And what is the kind of the language and the terminology that these teams are going to be used to working with? And how does that translate into what we expect to do in FinOps and kind of vice versa? So towards the tail end of last year, we wrapped up our first sprint. And if we can go forward one slide, JR, that is now published and available on the FinOps website. So you'll find that first set of deliverables. So you can see the survey results. You can see we got kind of a deep dive into 4 use cases as part of this. So focusing on total cost of ownership, chargeback, and tying into kind of wider kind of enterprise-wide IT chargeback models, forecasting, and how that kind of, how FinOps might work in actually as part of a wider IT kind of on-premise and public cloud forecasting approach, and also migration and operating in hybrid environments. So a little bit of a dig into how do we kind of evaluate workloads for migration? How do we kind of compare costs across environments, et cetera, because these were the most common use cases we had as fed back as part of that survey. You'll also find details into kind of how FinOps kind of maps into some of these other taxonomies. So in this example you're looking at in the top right, we took a look at the ATOM taxonomy, which is a kind of a discipline for kind of trying to cover the total scope of everything we might spend money on in IT. And what's really interesting is actually how well FinOps, we're kind of specialized in one kind of part of that cost structure. As we actually kind of map out over kind of the higher level IT application and business capabilities point of view, we're actually kind of spreading out into kind of to cover the full kind of same set of domains and knowledge there. Also kind of gives a little bit in the bottom right, a little flavor of actually how teams are meant to work together, how they're likely to interact, and what are the things, the kind of common themes that we're going to be collaborating on. So that was all launched at the tail end of last year. And if we go forward one more slide, so we're currently kind of considering what is next? What do we want to do as our second phase? So this is where I need to give a little plug for the chat, FinOps, ITFM, and TBM Working Group. So please have a look at the documentation. If there is something you feel like we should expand on more, if there's something where you're living this challenge and actually like, okay, I want to actually kind of work on enhancing this in a certain way, we've got some candidate ideas around reference taxonomies, doing reference translations between things like ATOM and our cloud service provider taxonomies is one particular candidate opportunity. Future guide sections and topics, so actually digging into optimization as a specific use case. We didn't have a chance to do that as part of Sprint 1, so that's a potential candidate for Sprint 2, or potentially kind of looking at how this works with other CSPs out there and how we can actually use the kind of information we have for enhancing our kind of benchmarking and migration analysis capabilities. That's the shortlist. It's by no means exclusive. If you have something else you'd like to see on that list, please join us in the chat, FinOps, TBM, and ITFM FinOps chat, FinOps, ITFM _TBM, and we look forward to seeing you there. And last but not least, I did want to give a big shout out, because we didn't get a chance to do this last year. On the next slide, JR, please, to all of the team members who contributed last year. So thank you very much to our regular contributors that came along for every session. I appreciate it. It was a lot of work and a lot of time. Thank you all for contributing your knowledge and expertise. And also, if you did happen to drop in for one or two sessions, thank you very much as well. All of the contributions are really valuable, really helpful in shaping how these two disciplines are meant to interact and work together. And we look forward to seeing you in the chat room to figure out where we go for step 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And he said the key words there, work together, right? Core tenet of FinOps is collaboration. We want to make sure that there are intersection points with ITFM, with ITAM, with SAM, with all the various disciplines, because a lot of the teams and organizations doing those disciplines are kind of toward the same goal, right? It's like understanding cost and finding value and optimizing. So if you want to work on other disciplines as well and get a group going, that's another great work group idea to put forward, because there's a lot of different parts of the organization processes that FinOps should be interacting with. Great. We'd also love to get your feedback on this summit. I'm going to bring this back after we get to the breakouts. If you want to screenshot it, that's great, but it'll pull up a quick survey if you want to speak your mind, or you can email one of us or Slack us. JR here from the FinOps Foundation. Thank you for watching. Please go to FinOps.org if you want to get plugged into this amazing community. And of course, hit subscribe right here on YouTube to get all the future content. Hope to see you soon.